states of Hormuz or Morocco, one way or the other. So whether the peace and stability will remain and the states are in a position to freely navigate carrier trade other activities, or the increased militarization of the Indian Ocean and the Pacific region would undermine those prospects, and then the concerned states or affected states that to react to that. The last question I would say, which begs many queries, is it's obvious that if India becomes a dominant military power and a nuclear power in the Indian Ocean, Pakistan will be forced to respond. As we heard in the morning session, that I think it's been coincidentally, Mark Fitzpatrick raised the question that why the consequences of arms race in South Asia with India and Pakistan, and he gave a very considered judgment that Pakistan is going to lose that race with India in the nuclear field. Perhaps I won't agree with him because Pakistan is not leading the race in any way. Coincidentally, I have worked as many years in the field of proliferation as he has. And my understanding is that Pakistan is 20 to 35 years behind India in doing anything which leads to a nuclear weapons development. So who is leading this arms race in South Asia? Is it Pakistan which is to be blamed or responsible for that? Or is it that India is to be really, our friends have to take up the case with India really of that very subject? I would also like to dispel that comparison of arms race which led to the collapse of the former Soviet Union. Pakistan at times, although I have not heard these words here, but Pakistan at times is being warned that you might collapse like the Soviet Union did because of the arms race, arms expansion. I think Pakistan is very cautious of this very fact. And Pakistan's allocation of resources, for which there is a very difficult report of public figures in terms of monetary, in terms of technological allocation, others. It's a very dedicated commitment of resources, but not superfluous resources. It's a considered development of a nuclear weapons capability, which is also other than cheaper for Pakistan to acquire and cheaper to develop. So we are not really wasting our money on development of nuclear weapons as some other countries may be doing for retaining or developing nuclear weapons. So I will leave it here, and the floor is now open for questions and answer sessions. I first had the finger raised by Air Commodore Khalid Nabi, so please you have.
Can I have the mic?
Thank you. My name is Khalid Nabi. I have been associated with Strategic Plans Division for about 17 years, having most recently left this position of Director General of Arms Control Department. I have one observation and one comment, both relate to Mark Fitzpatrick's presentation. My observation, and it is for the indulgence of the rest of us as well, is that Mark, true to his research, keeps the audiences so captive that all of us forgot to applaud when he finished his presentation. And I propose that we first do that.
I thought it was you didn't like
it. That was the hard part. So now the easy part. Okay, just one comment, a quick comment on the observation that you made about the imports of, including Pakistan, from North Korea. And it kind of rattled my mind, and I was thinking about the issue. There's only one example that I can think of, and that is, let me just quickly, in a sentence or two, explain that. There is an import of iron ore that was depicted in 1718's report in the last one. That came out, and this report, the writers of the report picked it up from Pakistan Customs and FBR website. We've been very sure that we do not have any dealings with North Korea. and the UN sanctions have translated into statutory regulatory orders issued by the government of Pakistan, which we think are being followed very, very closely. Now, there was an attempt to dig into this information, and we found out that the company that had actually reported this to the FBR clicked Korea, which was the import from South Korea, Republic of Korea, which was actually clicked wrongly on the website as North Korea. That error has been corrected, and the Security Council has been informed about this. So this piece of information may or may not be in the public domain, but here it is now. Thank you for actually saying there are other states also, and you mentioned them. And I think it's if you look at India and Pakistan, India's contribution to North Korea has been hugely significant, and that perhaps needs to come out a little more clearly. We respect your neutral analysis, and we think that this needs to come out. 20 years of training for North Korean rocket scientists, right? It's also, I believe, in the report. So those are the kind of information that shows the significance of the trade that is happening. Last point, a lot of literature insinuating Pakistan doing something or the other with North Korea originates in the Seoul, understandably because the Republic of Korea is concerned about it. And if you dig into the information, the source of that information, bulk of that is being reported by ANI, a news agency based in New Delhi. There you go. These are the kind of things that actually contextualize what is going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me take one or two more questions so we can save time. Because you had some questions. Thank you, sir, for a very illuminating and knowledgeable day. Somehow, I have a feeling that when we are discussing such topics, we shy away from the role that is being played in creating instability and maybe aiding or abetting terrorism by the key actor that is the United States of America. So probably for me, the issue is not whether Kim Jong-un can be deterred or not. The issue is whether or how the United States can be deterred. And that brings us to the bigger question, which anybody in the panel may like to address. Is peace in the South Asia region, particularly the APEC, in the strategic interest of the United States of America? Because without addressing that question, we can't really understand stability in South Asia. Thank you.
Thank you. Kindly introduce yourself.
Sir, I am Assistant Professor Heather Iqbal from Quaid-e-Azam University, and my question is directed towards Mark Fitzpatrick. Sir, you talked about, at length, you talked about North Korea's nuclear issue. What's the Chinese role in managing this conflict? And would you buy the hypothesis that the more the Americans ask for Chinese help in sorting out this nuclear weapon issue of North Korea, the more they are going to lose their power? Because the realism of which the US as the torchbearer says that every state has to cater for its own security and not ask for help. Secondly, you said that US is very opposed to the idea, indeed jittery, to the idea of South Korea getting nuclear weapons. But China, on the other hand, has a relaxed approach towards North Korean nuclear status. So would you blame American strategic narrow-mindedness for this receding American influence in Asia Pacific and Far East? Thank you.
Thank you. Mark, you have most of the questions.
Yeah, please.
We in this part of the world are not directly we are not as directly concerned about North Korea as we are about our own region. And you were right that focus is shifted to the Korean Peninsula instead of just South Asia. Now, in regard to North Korea, you see, the United States has mishandled the whole issue so badly. They had, when I was in Washington, in 1994, they signed the agreed framework, the framework agreement in 1994. With Robert Gallucci was the Assistant Secretary for Non-Proliferation. I was a friend and he briefed me about it. A few years later, and they were going to give them a light water reactor, and the Koreans were going to give up a weapons program. A few years later, the Americans unilaterally revoked the framework agreement on the plea that some bank in Macau, the North Korean government was doing some money laundering with some bank in Macau. Now, that was bad, of course. Treasury Department ruled against North Korea and said that there should be sanctions. But in the larger context, it was overreaction to revoke the framework agreement unilaterally. So, and the six-party talks also, you see, what the Koreans want, I think, is direct talks with the United States. What they want is recognition of their status. What they want is to be considered to be a country which has the capability of having influence. So it's all a bit of psychology here and mishandling by the US, which has aggravated this problem. Now the world is faced with the problem, with the danger of nuclear exchange. So I'd like to hear you comment on this. Thank you.
I draw a request, Dr. Patrick. Briefly,
Okay, thanks, Khalid. I've never had a conversation with you and I didn't come away better informed, so really appreciate that. And I think you're right in all points. Dr. Kim, I need to just respond to a couple of your initial points. You got the impression that I had compared Pakistan to North Korea or vice versa. I understand that impressions are in the eye of the beholder, but I just went back and checked what I said, and I'm pretty sure I didn't make that comparison. At the end, I compared South Korea to Pakistan, and I said that U.S. non-proliferation policy applies to all countries, and that's where I made a direct comparison. But I did, in a few other places, say North Korea and Pakistan in the same sentence, but not by means of meaning to compare them. You also said in your comments that, well, this is not about North Korea, but that I should learn that Pakistan is not the largest producer of nuclear weapons. I would welcome. Well, I think you're the largest, actually, but at least I've claimed you're the largest. So if you're only the third, I'll go back. But I would welcome factual, basis for comparing it. And look, it's all guesswork anyway. But my guesswork is that you are. But look, that's sort of a different subject. I'm going to go back to North Korea, but I want to make. Since I gave up 5 minutes, can I pose a question to another panelist? I want to ask Sayed Muhammad Ali a point. And I'm going back to North Korea, but this is something that has been bothering our delegation the whole time we've been in Islamabad, is this, if I may say, preoccupation with what India is doing in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. We don't get it. We understand, the talking point that Pakistan has to have a full spectrum deterrence, and you can't leave any speck of Indian land uncovered if they've got some military base that might have a strategic facility there. But we just don't get it. What's the purpose of having a counter-force strategy like this? What's the purpose? It's not deterrence, because you have deterrence from counter value. You can hit many Indian cities. That's counter value. You can hold India at bay by threatening populations and capitals and command and control centers. You don't need to be able to attack every Indian facility. That's counter force, and you don't have the capability to do that with every facility. So do you recognize that what you have by focusing on Andaman and Nicobar Islands is counter force? If you recognize it, fine. If you don't recognize it, we need to have a greater discussion about that. It's war fighting. It's not just deterrence. Okay, back to North Korea. Sorry, I'm getting worked up there. No, wait. I want to talk about North Korea and Trump. I have to talk about Trump. Dr. Usher, you know, when I'm in the United States, I criticize my president all the time. But when I'm overseas, somehow I don't feel disposed to do that. So let me just say I get your point. I get your point too, Sarwar. I get your point. The facts are not quite exactly as you put them, but I get the point. The United States has mishandled things. I say that all the time in Washington too. But it's not America's fault that North Korea is doing what it's doing. It's not America's fault. Stop that. Oh, I can go on time, but I won't. Okay. Is America ceding, Professor, is America ceding the ground to China by saying it's China's, it's up to China to solve this? Well, I don't draw that, but I get your point too. That's sort of an interesting analysis in a way. In a way, maybe I would be happy if China took responsibility for this North Korea problem. They created it by coming to North Korea's aid in 1950 and stopping the United States from unifying the peninsula after North Korea started the Korean War. So I wouldn't mind if China just came in and handled the situation, and if that meant the United States was somehow receding. Okay, but I think if you look at China and American relative force structures in the region, there's no comparison. The United States is not really ceding power. It's actually, the more important point is that the United States cannot rely on China to solve this. China doesn't have the kind of pressure leverage that everybody thinks it has. For example, cutting off oil. One of our colleagues at IISS did an assessment of what happens if China cuts off the oil. North Korea would make oil from liquefying coal. It's very inefficient, but they could do it. They've got the technology, 70-year-old technology. So I think the United States does have to take matters into its own hands and work with China, but not cede the field to China. I agree.
I've on the old friend with Marcus Patrick, and I thought when he makes a presentation, last time when he came to Pakistan, he is deliberately and positively provocative in order to potentiate a better discussion. It's very strange to see first time that he lost his own.
No, I did that on purpose.
Thanks, sir. First, sure, I'll thank Dr. Naqvi for ensuring that Mark speaks in the post-lunch session. And just 3 brief points. Earlier, for the last 16 years, Pakistan is used to listening to policy prescription on Afghanistan. We just gave a policy prescription on nuclear targeting. So, like, who should we target, where should we target, where should we not target. So it's very interesting. I'm sure people much more knowledgeable than myself seriously consider probably this matter. However, basic logic of deterrence is, from Pakistan's perspective, that our deterrence is not credible unless any part of Indian territory or capability is invulnerable, because it allows you to save and secure your territory 3 years after the Indian tests in Nicobar Islands. And it is not just for a nuclear specific purpose. We see perhaps a similar model of Yogasha being run. There are airstrips, there are P-8Is being stationed there, which have a ASW role, which will obviously have, which I think that Admiral Mukhtar will consider in terms of submarine patrols. So there are a lot of aspects to this base which Pakistan is seriously considering. And this last point regarding the fastest growing nuclear arsenal, I think Chair said, and I stand corrected, that Pakistan's first nuclear test came 24 years after the Indian nuclear test. Let's just stop at that. How can we know?
Thank you very much, sir. I've been asked to wrap up in 10 minutes, 5 of which has already gone. So I can't wrap up in 5 minutes. I have 5 candidates on my list. They're waiting for some questions. So kindly go for 5 more minutes. Yeah, I can.
But I'll ask them the question in one go.
Next on my list is Murali Kazmi.
So thank you. And I'm sure you will
Please
not consider me the heavyweights because I'm a lightweight, sir, by boxing standards. So I wanted to thank you actually, Mark, for keeping us out of the Indian and Pacific Ocean region's dangerous waters and bringing us to the Korean Peninsula. But my question is not to you. My question is to Dr. Maxwell, because British, I believe, are masters at politics, and they have lesser focus at strategy. So, and I'll also ask the same question for Ali, which is that how do you consider the possibility of Korea joining together, like Germany did, which will obviate the need for either DPRK to maintain nuclear deterrence against the US, and the US no longer needing to either extend its nuclear deterrence or making such costly and dangerous commitment towards East Asia. So how will unification of Korean Peninsula and denuclearization impact the sordid American history of presence in the region to